friends? Welcome to another episode of Rotoworld Live here in, Studio 2? Studio 2.
Yes.
My name is Josh Norris. That is John Daigle. That is Ian Harditz. We are here in Week 5. Gentlemen, how are you feeling today?
Week 5, and I still feel fresh. I think that's a good sign.
Wow,
I still feel
no
good.
sign of slowing down, Ian?
Oh, we're good. This is going to be the best week yet, Josh.
Ian might have 16 columns next week, not just 15. In this next 45 minutes, we are here to help you set your optimal lineup. That's our whole goal here.
That's the idea.
Leading up until kickoff, to help you win your fantasy league, to help you win whatever money you might have on the line today. Let's put it that way. And each and every week here on Rotoworld Live, we start off with the blurbs of the week. Not much news in a very news-filled season so far. I would say this week, to me, the most impactful tidbit is Josh Allen starting despite suffering most likely a concussion last week. He faced off against the Tennessee Titans. Ian, does this open up any avenues for Cole Beasley, John Brown, whoever else plays in that backfield, or are you still maybe a little intrigued by that Tennessee Titans defense?
No, I like this for the Bills offense. And the two things we have seen this year is that, the whole passing game is going through Beasley and John Brown. I mean, both guys, they've only had one game, I think. Yeah, each of them only have one game with fewer than 8 targets. So they're getting fed. Like, feel free to do a double stack if you're doing any DFS lineups. And the one concern with Josh, because how dependent he is on his rushing production, like, could this concussion limit that? But I really don't think so, because so much of it just comes off as scrambles anyway. So even if the coaching staff does try to limit his design runs, he's going to get his anyway.
I'm just glad because this means Dawson Knox is live for another week.
Love it.
Dawson Knox, who just got done running a season-high amount of routes and playing snaps. Like, he's actually their full-time primary tight end now. And with a quarterback like Josh Allen, like, they can make something special happen together.
Since we are live, and now all of you are joining us, I want to tell you to leave your questions in the Twitch and YouTube chats. We'll be answering them throughout the entire show. That's really the foundation, the core of the show, so thanks for being here. Let's get to some of those already. Let's start off with 6Uru201, Juju Smith-Schuster, or Jarvis Landry. Both dealing with injuries so far this season. Did you see that Juju showed up in a mask today?
No.
Did you see that? Like, all the other receivers were like practicing on the field, and Juju was active,
right,
but he showed up in a mask in the tunnel.
That changes everything.
He is going up. I do want to say this,
rankings.
though. Juju is facing, at home, a Baltimore Ravens defense that is no longer, or should be respected, as the Baltimore Ravens. And so if there ever was a game for Juju to really, really get back on track, this is probably it at home in a home spot.
We'll see, man. The one guy that still is really legit in that Ravens defense is Marlon Humphrey, who could be having himself a nice little shadow day with Juju. So I don't know. I lean towards Jarvis Landry there, just with these volume concerns. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but we're legit seeing Juju get the same amount of targets right now as James Conner and Deontay Johnson with Mason Rudolph under center. I think, Juju will be the number one guy sooner rather than later as we get a larger sample size. But we got Jarvis clear from the protocol. I think it's a much better matchup. Even though the Ravens are a little bit improved, I'll take the 49ers matchup.
Landry was better in that hike and 12 personnel for the Browns last week, but I still think Juju's ceiling in an untapped Steelers offense. Like, I refuse to believe that this is the offense they're going to run all healthy.
You don't think they're going to run Wildcat 25% of the time?
Well, we're going to find out
tap pass.
because Vance McDonald's active, James Conner's active, and Juju's active. We're going to find out today what the hell this offense is.
Let's add one of those with Auk33, again, another one of your questions. He adds Juju or Alshon Jeffrey. I'm again going Juju here. I know you're playing naked Carson Wentz in DFS Cash this week, not to put your lineup out there again.
No, I love Alshon in this spot. You kidding me? I mean, none of those Jets cornerbacks I think can hang with him. No D-Jacks. We can assume, I think, 8 targets in this spot for Alshon. And again, pretty much a cake matchup. I understand the blowout concerns for some of these games, but when you're like a featured offensive weapon, I think the concern's less, because if you're going to blow the team out, someone needs to get the yards and scores.
There is a concern, and Jeffrey is the safer play. It's more about asking yourself, what can you stomach? And if that's the instance, if that's my team, I still play Juju over Jeffrey.
DJ Q-Tip, who I feel like has joined us every single week, thank you for that. Do I stream Andy Dalton in a bounce-back game? Or Baker Mayfield with a safer floor against a good defense? Again, Baker Mayfield is facing the San Francisco 49ers, and we know that Andy Dalton's facing maybe the worst defense in the NFL.
Andy Dalton was the QB10 going into that Monday night matchup. So, does Baker have a safer floor? Because we've seen one game, and that's it. Whereas we saw 3 from Andy Dalton.
Well, no, John Ross. And a lot of those points have come
John
from
Ross
John
is
Ross.
the big one. Does that offense get significantly worse without a receiver that can take off the top? And probably does.
And can the Cardinals defense maybe transform 3 wide receivers for the Cincinnati Bengals into what John Ross brings?
That's a good question, though.
Yeah, I think those concerns are a little bit mitigated when we're facing the worst secondary in the league,
Right.
probably. But it's a fair question. The one thing with Baker's, even though last week stats were better, more efficient, and all that, but like particularly the Jarvis Landry and Ricky Seals-Jones production, like a lot of that was just run after the catch, kind of blown coverage situations. So I still think this Browns passing offense has a way to go. I think I'm leaning Dalton, as disgusting as
I am
that
too,
sounds.
actually.
I agree. I lean Dalton. I don't worry about that Monday night matchup whatsoever.
Whenever in doubt, go with the home favorite with a point total of over 24. And Cincinnati are home favorites with expected point total of over 25.
Okay.
So I know that you might
the
have
logic.
to eliminate their names, but go with Andy Dalton over Baker Mayfield. All right, let's keep going with JV0 in full point PPR. Pick a wide receiver to start. Josh Gordon, Cortland Sutton, DJ Shark, Demarcus Robinson, or Alden Tate.
It's flash, no doubt.
It's still Josh Gordon.
Josh Gordon.
Still.
A lot of good options. That's a good problem to be in.
It is.
But Josh Gordon, no doubt.
DJ Shark is an interesting one
Yes.
because he's really come on as of late. He has a great connection with Gardner Minshew. He's looking like the top wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And we know that one of, I would say, the fastest defensive back on the Panthers in Dante Jackson's out of this game.
Had Brian Burns and Gerald McCoy been out, leaving no pressure to get created against the Jags, then I would have gone Shark most likely. But I think it's still Josh Gordon, and it's just a smash spot for the Patriots.
If anything, I wouldn't hate Dede Westbrook this week because I think Chark gets the James Bradbury matchup, and quietly, Chark and Dede have the same amount of targets this year at 26. I know Chark has clearly been the better receiver, and I do think he is ingrained as their number one option, but Minshew's just spreading it out.
Here's another one. Mecole Hardman,
A lot of questions this morning.
John Brown, Darrell Williams, or Hollywood Brown, wide receiver 2 and flex. So I guess pick 2 of these.
It's Marquise Brown, and then I'll toss the other one to Ian.
I'll let Ian think about this because Marquise Brown had a down week.
Yes.
And his air yards dropped significantly last week than in the first 2 weeks of the
Still
season.
a team high.
Still a team high. I mean, it was only like 41.
41. It was, yeah. It was 41, but still a team high.
I am a little bit nervous, and I have to tell the people out there, I am a little bit nervous that this Ravens team isn't exactly what we thought it was in the first 2 weeks of the season when they faced the Miami Dolphins, when they faced the Arizona Cardinals versus what they have been the last 2 weeks. But overall, and this is how we opened the show, I think the Ravens now are an offensive-led team. Like the offense will have to carry the defense this season if they are going to be a good football team.
Mark Andrews cleared from the injury report altogether on Friday. And we know he's top 3 in the league right now in tight end catches from the slot. And the slot is where you historically attack the Steelers, and that goes for this season as well. So both Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews in the slot. I genuinely think this is that's another genuinely, by the way. I know you've been pointing that out. I think this is a game that explodes over the total. I think both offenses have zero struggle in finding success against one another.
I agree a lack of air yards for Hollywood last week was concerning. I mean, he didn't have a big week 3, but he was still getting the downfield shots, so it was okay. But at the same time, the one takeaway we can definitely have from this Ravens offense is that the passing game is going through Hollywood and Mark Andrews. I mean, both guys are over 30 targets right now. No one else, I think, is over even like 12 or 15. So definitely going through those two. Among the other options, I feel like I'm most inclined to go with Smokey Brown still. I mean, mentioned before in the Josh Allen talk, but he's got a floor this year. He's getting at least 8 targets pretty much every single game. And Beasley's their underneath guy, but as we kind of thought in preseason, like Smokey is the better suited number 1 receiver for Josh Allen with how much he likes to throw downfield.
I think one of the names that was listed was Demarcus Robinson. It's interesting that he's kind of morphed into the top leading wide receiver for that team. We are talking Kansas City later on, so I won't spoil it in one of the core 4 matchups. Let's answer one more question before we start on that core 4, and that is actually from YouTube. Run B, Marlon Mack or Matt Breida at the flex. With Matt Breida, we know that Tevin Coleman is coming back, but I still think Matt Breida is the most talented player in that backfield. They're on Monday night against the Cleveland Browns at home. You also have Marlon Mack, who's been dealing with injuries, but we know that the Colts want to run the football more than probably pass the football in the fantasy, let's put it that way, of Frank Reich.
Is it a good matchup technically for Marlon Mack? Yes. Is it a good spot for Marlon Mack and the Colts? Absolutely not. 11-point dogs on the road in prime time against a Chiefs offense that struggled for over 300 yards passing last week, and the highest total of the weekend as well. I do want pieces of this Colts offense, but I think you want more of their garbage time passing game, and that would be Nyheim Hines in this spot, not Marlon Mack. I just don't see how they use Marlon Mack. Game script's going to go against him immediately.
Yeah, but at least he's not fighting it out with 3 other running backs in the
true.
same backfield. So it's a good problem to have, just in that like Mac's playing tonight, Breda's playing tomorrow night, so you don't have the 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock issue. I lean Marlon Mack if he's going to be active. It sounds like he's a true game time decision, just because I do think there's a higher touch floor here. But you said it, man. The one real concerning thing from last week, because he had the ankle injury, and Frank Reich came out and said, look, like he could have returned, but we were just in our no huddle mode, and that's in Nyheim Hines' time. Like, that's not great. It's
right.
what we saw most of last season, but it looked like Marlon Mack was going to break out of that game flow dependent state that we saw for most of last year. But I don't think that's the case. So it could get bad for Marlon if they get down quickly.
And he did the same protocol as last week. No practice Wednesday, no practice Thursday, practice Friday, game time decision.
If you enjoy the advice that we are giving right now, go and sign up for our season pass. Just go to rotoworld.com/win. It's $19.99 right now. You get redraft rankings, obviously, prior to the season. You get player tracking. You get rankings from multiple experts. You get Ian's rankings. You get Daigle's rankings. You get custom projections just for your scoring. Again, go to rotoworld.com/win for the Rotoworld season pass. All right, let's now go to the first Core 4 matchup, and that is the Minnesota Vikings at the New York Giants. Let's start off with this question. First of all, the total is 45, with Minnesota on the road as favorites of 4.5 points. Speaking of the Vikings, it's been a difficult time so far this season for the passing game. The running game has been outstanding. Dalvin Cook has been incredible, maybe the best running back in the NFL. But Daigle, what do you tell the people who spent early round draft picks on Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, who haven't produced but could produce today against a very, very bad Giants defense?
My fellow Americans, have you seen the Giants defense try to cover anyone at all? Yes, Kirk Cousins has been bad. Yes, he has missed wide open receivers as recently as last week, which caused Thielen to get angry in the locker room. But I just strictly use the regression argument. It's like, is Kirk Cousins bad? Yes. Is he this bad? No. This passing game will even out, and this is a Giants offense now with Daniel Jones in their center that can actually push the game flow towards using the passing game and like force the Vikings to throw the ball. And I know Mike Zimmer does not want to throw the ball. They're the slowest team in the league for a reason. I don't think he's that stubborn, though.
Let's look at actually last year's numbers in the first 4 games. Look, you see 56 targets in Adam Thielen's directions, 44 for Stephon Diggs. Compare that, again, we care about volume, to just 22 through 4 games for Thielen this year and 19 for Stephon Diggs. Ian, it's been a wild week in the world of Stephon Diggs and the Minnesota Vikings, one of the best route runners in the NFL, one of the best at creating separation. But as you can see, and what we heard all this offseason, it was a run-focused offense, yet the passing game has completely disintegrated.
I don't blame the guy for being mad. He was averaging 9.9 targets per game last season, working as one of the league's best wide receivers. Now he's all the way down to 4.8. Like, people comparing him to Antonio Brown is just ridiculous. Your best one of your best players wants the ball more. Like, what's wrong with that? What coach wouldn't want wide receivers that want to be throwing the ball more? So I agree with a lot of what Daigle was saying, just in terms of, I don't think Zimmer is going to all of a sudden turn into this pass-happy offense because he has a player that's not happy. He's way too hard-headed to kind of have that sort of approach. But this is a spot where they could just be forced to throw the ball more if the Giants can keep up with them, because the 2 games where we just really saw the pass volume completely deflate, I mean, they were up by multiple touchdowns like in those second halves. It just wasn't close. So it's a matchup they can definitely win through the air. Will they need to win it through the air, I think, is the question, because as bad as this Giants secondary is, their front 7 isn't that much better either. They've allowed an average of 118 rushing yards per game since losing Snacks Harrison last season. So I don't really know if they're going to be able to stop this Vikings offense no matter what they want to do, and hopefully they can keep up, because otherwise it's just going to be Dalvin Cook season again.
The Vikings aren't the only ones with wide receiver questions or receiver questions. It's also on the Giants side. They've been performing really well in Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram, but now, Daigle, you add Golden Tate to the mix. If people drafted him, they had hung on for him for, 4 weeks?
Yep.
And now he's back on the field. How do you think he fits or adjusts this wide receiver group?
I mean, it's genuinely a guessing game, but what we do know is that they'll both mix in, both Shepard and Tate will mix in as their slot guys. Like last year when the Eagles traded for Golden Tate, he ran 95+% of his routes from the slot. This year, Shepard's around 92%, I believe. And so they are both slot guys. They both have worked from the outside in the past, but to get them both on the field, like they're just going to combine what they do best. So I think Ingram's the one I don't worry about, especially in fantasy football. That is a volatile position, and currently I believe he's the #1 tight end overall. So that's someone you're not getting off of. But for Shepard, we should expect his team high share of air yards and targets with Daniel Jones under center to not so much plummet, but to definitely get taken away and soaked up from.
Do you have any, I mean, I'm sure you have concerns. What is your projection, I should say, Ian, this week for Golden Tate and his debut for the Giants? Because again, this isn't someone that we can just, say this is what he did last year, this is what he's going to do this year. He's not coming off an injury, it's just a suspension. So what about Golden Tate this week? Is there any chance that you would play him at all in season long?
I'm concerned about both these guys. I think Ingram will be fine, like Daigle was saying, but we don't really know what's going to happen here. I mean, Tate was a 51% slot guy in the preseason. We've seen Shep be around 65% this regular season so far. They're both going to be inside for a good amount, which means both should avoid Xavier Rhodes for good portions of the game, which is obviously helpful. But my biggest question is, what will this Giants offense look like when they're not facing the Buccaneers or the Redskins? Because we looked at this stretch, when Daniel Jones got the starting job, and we said, okay, it's a good time to start him now versus the Bucs before they got to go play the Vikings, and I think it's the Patriots next week.
It's a short turnaround. Thursday, Patriots too.
Exactly. So not easy. But the one thing that has been leaning towards Tate here is that Daniel Jones, as much stock as we put in, once he would come into the offense, he'd be throwing downfield more. It really hasn't been the case. I mean, he has a lower average target depth than Eli Manning has this year, surprisingly.
He is making plays just from watching what Eli could not do. His mobility is absolutely a strength. If there is one concern, I'm not saying it definitely is, but if there is a possible concern, it's the 2 interceptions that he threw against the Bucs just died down the field. And so that is something to watch, the velocity. And we know Minnesota's defense and Mike Zimmer can really cause chaos to veteran quarterbacks and certainly rookie quarterbacks. Sure. All right, let's get back to your questions. Again, leave them in the Twitch chat and in the YouTube chat. This is a good one from Jacob, 2006. Pick 2 of these, okay? So sit 1. Curtis Samuel, Will Fuller, or Josh Gordon?
Awesome problem to have.
It's a great problem to have. Good job.
I'm sitting Curtis Samuel.
I know you're probably not sitting Curtis Samuel.
I was about to say, I'm sitting Fuller there. Definitely fire up Flash, but I would sit Fuller just because.
You're going to sit Will Fuller against an Atlanta Falcons defense that has been thrashed. That if, I know, I'm just playing devil's advocate. Don't get mad at me. Will Fuller, who, if a pass was thrown 1 stride shorter last week, would have had a bomb touchdown. It would be tough for me. I know he hasn't produced so far this season, but it would be tough for me to sit Will Fuller in this case.
I think both Fuller and Samuel are almost in that exact same predicament because I pulled every wide receiver's air yards and receiving yards. 7 of them have 200 more air yards and receiving yards this season. Fuller and Samuel are both on that list. These guys have both been getting deep balls all year. They just haven't quite come down with yet. The big deciding factor for me is Jalen Ramsey's out, which means we get Trey Herndon out there. And
he got picked on last week.
Picked on, that's an understatement, man. It was like 6 catches, 115 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's coming from Joe Flacco and company. So I think Kyle Allen and Curtis Samuel can get going.
We're going to see what happens, but we no longer have Kenny Stills taking deep targets away from DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller. We have QT who's going to run routes shorter than 10 yards. So I do think there's more opportunity this week in particular for both Hopkins and Fuller.
Warvey is in a bit of dire straits, he says. He also said good morning. Good morning to all of you. Full point PPR. Cole Beasley, Geronimo Allison, or Michael Gallup in my flex. It's always tough for me to start a player at a skill position coming off a significant injury that makes him miss multiple weeks.
Yeah.
And that's what Michael Gallup is doing. So it comes down to Cole Beasley or Geronimo Allison. And Cole Beasley will get his 5 for 52, maybe a touchdown in there. Geronimo Allison is the one that probably has the higher ceiling, but also plays out of the slot and also is in a difficult matchup against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, it's just like Gallup, not only probably limited athletically and snap-wise, but the Packers have allowed the second fewest fantasy points to opposing wideouts. It's just a super tough matchup. I think
you go safe and you go Cole Beasley.
I am never floor guy. Like, I always shoot for the moon. I think in this instance, like, that floor is probably your best case option with Beasley.
Beasley doesn't have the easiest matchup either. I think Logan Ryan's the best cornerback in that Titans secondary, and he's usually in the slot. But Cowboys and Packers defense, I think they're both top 4 this year and fewest
so good.
fantasy points to wide receivers. So, I'd stick with Beasley.
And I was a big fan of Geronimo Allison heading into the season, but I'm not going to say what we have seen is a consistent game that we can hang our hat on week in and week out, right? Sometimes he's involved, sometimes he's not. Some people are injured, some aren't, and that's why. So, definitely I will go to Cole Beasley. I did not hear what you said. Sorry, I was speaking. Let's keep going with one more question. This is Scott Grossman, Stephon Diggs or Geronimo Allison. Ian, let's go to you for that one.
I'm going Diggs here, and the volume is a concern, but the volume is kind of a concern for Allison too. I know Devontae Adams is out, but still, I think he's only got 12 targets like this entire season. He's made pretty good use of them recently, found the end zone a couple times, but we got to ride back with Diggs. It's an iffy, squeaky wheel spot because I don't think, again, they're going to go out of their way to throw the ball necessarily, but even if they don't throw the ball a lot, he can smash this spot.
I like Diggs. I like Diggs a lot this week.
Speaking of Geronimo Allison, let's now go to our second Core 4 game. That is the Green Bay Packers at the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, some wonderful matchups this week, guys. It's a great Sunday to watch some football. Green Bay on the road are dogs by 3.5, again, to the Cowboys, 3.5-point favorites, 46 total in this one. First question to you. With Devontae Adams out, who benefits, if anyone, in this matchup, Ian?
I think it's Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He'll take over as the number 1 guy, but with that said, pump the brakes on this whole Packers offense. They're 22nd in yards per play so far this season. The only time we have seen consistent production from them was against the Eagles throwing the ball when half of the Eagles secondary was just on the sideline with injuries. So the run game, I mean, Aaron Jones, I think he's going to split more snaps than people are expecting with Dexter. But Jamal Williams being out, I mean, he was their best pass down back so far this year as well. So you're taking away 2 of the bigger pieces of that passing game. Road spot, very tough Cowboys defense. If you got better options, I'd say go with them.
And the Packers called up Trey Carson from the practice squad, whatever that means. We'll see if he plays at all.
He'll probably play ahead of Dexter Williams.
Maybe, possibly so.
What's your read on Aaron Jones so far this year, Daigle?
I mean, it's the same thing as last year, right? Like if Jamal Williams is healthy or they have someone else to split the duties, then Aaron Jones is just a 60% snap guy.
Right.
It's not what we think about Aaron Jones. It's what the coaches think, which is where a lot of analysis goes wrong. And the coaches clearly don't want to give him a full workload. I think the trickle-down effect, though, I'm still betting on Jimmy Graham this week. I understand the past, we had 2 weeks, weeks 2 and 3, where he didn't catch a single ball. But remember, like, game time call both those games. Weeks 1 and 4, though, not only second on the team with the Packers in targets, spiked a touchdown in both, averaged, I think it was 45.5 yards and 1 score. So I do think Jimmy Graham benefits in this matchup.
He's only good on Thursday nights.
There you go. Let's flip it on over to the other side of this, the Dallas Cowboys side. It's a bit of a selfish question, I have to ask, because I drafted a lot of Ezekiel Elliott, and I've been a bit concerned, Daigle, that his passing game usage has completely disappeared. Let's take a look at that full screen if we can, because it is glaring. Last year, he averaged over 6 targets per game. He's about 3.5 so far this year, 5 receptions per game last year, under 3 this year. His yardage has been halved by more than that. And it's concerning, right? Because 77 receptions in total last year. And so far, Daigle, he just has not been involved. Do you think that changes? Do you think this is just the Kellen Moore offense? What do you think?
It's what we talked about all offseason, though. It's what we pondered because we weren't sure. Everyone assumed that Elliott would just go into this passing game role again, but with a new offense and also this being the first time, last year being the first time that he saw over 40 targets. And he saw miles above that, 95. Like, would that happen again? And now with Jason Witten underneath, who's been a safety valve actually being used in the passing game. Now with Randall Cobb, it's just a totally different offense. And last week, I think he saw an uptick in targets as opposed to the rest of the season because that was a false Kellen Moore offense. Like, I think that actually fell into the Jason Garrett line of thinking.
Okay. I was going to ask that. Like, what is your takeaway, Ian, from this Cowboys loss to the Saints and how they played offense when it was so different than maybe it was the previous 3 weeks?
I agree. I don't think the targets are going to be there every week for Zeke. But the good takeaway from Zeke from that game was 97% snap rate. I mean, it was looking like Pollard could be a legitimate, like, complementary option in this offense. And even if that was only going to be 25, 30% snaps, like, Zeke is not as valuable if you don't have his targets and he's not playing an every down role, obviously, versus if he is. So just knowing that Pollard is not going to be a guy that's stealing Zeke's targets and Zeke's, touches wherever on the field, that's good to know moving forward.
And this matchup in particular, though, like, remember, Packers, 5 yards per attempt allowed. Like, if there's one game that he doesn't need the passing game usage, it's this one.
Just to close out this second Core 4 matchup, Tyron Smith is out, left tackle for the Cowboys. Lyle Collins is hurt at right tackle, but he most likely is going to play. And I'm just super concerned of how the Packers are going to score points in this game. Yeah,
I mean, it's all right. And remember, last year, Tyron Smith, we saw games without him, and it was
really
it was
bad.
a couple years ago maybe, and it was a disaster.
2017 was a disaster.
Yeah,
and
so bad.
They need to run the ball here. The Packers are 5th in DVOA against the pass, 27th against the run. So it makes Cowboys need to get the run game back on track, and that's also the best path to victory.
John Daigle, you do a lot of work for Rotoworld each and every week. A lot of that work is
my eyes are
headed
heavy.
in the DFS toolkit /DFS portion of Rotoworld. Why don't you pitch the DFS toolkit to all these people?
Well, we pitch it twice a week already. Once on this spectacular show that you're watching, and then once on Thursdays, Ian and I will jump on YouTube.
Yeah, they left me out.
The NBC Sports YouTube. You're busy enough already. You don't need to be it. You don't need to see the rotoworld.com/DFS toolkit, because the DFS toolkit has projections, it has rankings, it has expectations, points per dollar values, which Ian and I will actually point out every Thursday, like I said. So come and join us once again, rotoworld.com/DFS, and that's where you can get all the DFS tools you need to play Carson Wentz in cash, maybe.
Great job reading that script.
Maybe my
on the
guy.
prompter.
That's why I was looking at the teleprompter the whole time.
Let's get back to people's questions. This one comes from YouTube, from G Sharp Beats. Mark Ingram or Derrick Henry, please help. It's a good situation to be in. We know that Derrick Henry is going up against a very, very good Buffalo Bills defense. And who was the other one? Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram is going to get his touches no matter what, but this Ravens offense might not be quite as good as we thought in the first 2 weeks.
It's still Derrick Henry for me.
I think both guys are going to get their touches. The only difference is Henry's touches are like 18 to 20, Ingram's are 12 to 15. So give me Henry.
It's also one of those that if you feel like the Tennessee Titans are going to win against the Bills, and they are 3-point favorites
They
in
have
this
Taylor
one,
Lewin back.
then Derrick Henry is going to get a boatload of touches, especially in the fourth quarter. Let's keep it going with Roy Hobbs, who always leaves us a question. Frank Gore or Damian Williams, with Devin Singletary out for Buffalo. Again, I do not feel comfortable playing Damian Williams coming off a multi-week injury, and also in a very crowded backfield with LaShawn McCoy, who's most likely the starter now, and Darrell Williams. So Frank Gore is the answer.
Frank Gore is the answer, and stick around because we're going to talk the Chiefs' backfield in particular here in a second.
I'm concerned about Damian.
Horizontal tees.
I'm a little concerned about Damian. I'll go with Gore.
Kevin Moran, pick one. Phillip Lindsay, Golden Tate, or Jarvis Landry. I don't know if we've ever been asked a Phillip Lindsay question.
I go with Lindsay. He got
just like that guy.
He got a bad rap to start the season because of how involved Freeman was. But the only thing we need to worry about in Denver is that Devontae Booker is mercifully out of the picture. Like, it's a 2 running back backfield there. And last week was, it was interesting game script. We didn't see their touches get as high as usual. But I would expect Lindsay and Freeman to flirt with that 15 touch mark on most weeks, which is more than what those other guys can say.
Full point PPR, choose one. This is for Trey. Sony Michel, finally. LaShawn McCoy, or Sammy Watkins, who had a great week 1 and has done nothing since.
Oh, it is.
Say Sony.
I'll say Sony.
Damian Harris is inactive. That's the big thing here. They have Sony Michel, Brandon Bolden, and James White. And this is not a James White game. James White, yes, and historically in the past, 21 PPR points without Rex Burkhead. But they are
They're 15.5 point
They're 3-score favorites against the Washington without their starting quarterback, who, whatever that means, without offensive linemen, with a hobbled star wide receiver. It is no tight ends. They're starting Jeremy Sprinkle.
Well, you said without their starting quarterback. It wouldn't surprise me if this has been the long con by Jay Gruden to always want to start Colt McCoy.
He loves Colt McCoy as much as he loves cigarettes.
Again, I feel like we say this every week. If this is not a Sony Michel week, there never will be one.
I was about to say,
there's been 3 Sony Michel weeks.
They have not trailed this season. This has been a Sony Michel season. He just has not put it together yet. But hey,
today,
this could be it.
It's Sony Michel, and just hate yourself afterwards.
Let's go to the third Core 4 game. That is the Indianapolis Colts at the Kansas City Chiefs. Sunday Night Football on NBC. Tune in. 54 total in this one. That's the highest of the weekend. 10.5-point home favorites the Kansas City Chiefs are. Let's go to the first question. It's on the Colts side, excuse me. If the Colts keep up with the Chiefs, Ian Harditz, who is it through? We know that T.Y. Hilton is back. We know that they're down Devin Funchess and Paris Campbell. So how can the Colts possibly keep up with this high-powered Chiefs offense?
We saw when they started off the season really well, weeks 1 and 2, the offense was going through Marlon Mack and T.Y. Hilton. I think that's what we need to see again. And yes, the Marlon Mack, game flow is a concern, and how healthy is he? I know he was banged up last week, but he was also banged up the week before, and we saw him get 18 touches, play 62% snaps. So there is concern here, but again, like, he really is the engine of this offense. So if we're imagining a world where they can keep things going, I do think Marlon Mack's going to be very involved in that. Now, the T.Y. Hilton news, we really got to just love, because this guy has been fine playing hurt. I know you were saying you don't like playing guys that come off of injuries. That's fair, but T.Y. Hilton's a special breed. I mean, this guy has had a bunch of questionable games over the years, but he's averaged 5.5 catches, 87 yards, 0.2 touchdowns in 14 career games when listed on the injury report and playing through it. I know every injury isn't created equal, but T.Y. is good enough to still ball out in this less than ideal spot.
Yeah, I like
Same
Hilton.
thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's what he said. I like
All right.
Hilton.
Well, let's flip over to the Chiefs side. You pitched and brought up that we were going to talk about the Chiefs' backfield. So rank the startability of the three, I guess, LaShawn McCoy, and Darrell Williams, and Damian Harris.
LaShawn McCoy.
Damian Williams as
So
well.
this is still a guessing game, right? Like, we don't know. I think the only two mistakes you can make here is, one, believing Damian Williams comes in and immediately plays 60% of snaps, and two, thinking Darrell Williams is droppable in season long. Because this is a guy who was RB15 the past 2 weeks. We saw his ceiling, RB8, I believe, RB6 after that Jalen Samuels performance just last week. They're all three going to mix in this game in particular. And I think Damian Williams is limited in this game personally. I think he's held back. So it's a matter of what they do moving forward. But in this matchup, it's LaShawn McCoy, RB25, I said it again. Damian Williams, RB35, 36, and Darrell Williams sprinkled in right behind him.
It's going to be very telling, let's put it this way, if Damian Williams comes back and is run ahead of Darrell Williams in goal line situations. Because that's where a lot of Darrell Williams' points are coming from. So that's the one area to watch for me.
I do think some of those Darrell Williams goal line touches weren't so much they did not want Shady in the goal line. They were more, he is their pass down back, and they were kind of in pass down situations when they got into the goal line area. I mean, there was a sequence last week where LaShawn McCoy got 3 straight carries from inside the 3-yard line until we finally banged one in. But I think what that tells us is LaShawn McCoy is more or less their early down back. He can do pass stuff for sure, but we've seen more of the Williams RBs on pass downs being used as blockers, as receivers. I think that makes sense. It's a complicated Chiefs offense. I know Shady has experience with Reed over the years, but it makes sense to me that the spot where they haven't been able to fully get Shady going is in the pass game when you got more things to worry about, and Patrick Mahomes' health is at risk. So I think if anything, Damian's going to come in and take Darrell's snaps more than Shady's. But both the Williams with them.
John McCoy looks good, man, for his 25th season in the NFL.
Absolutely looks great.
But I thought he was washed because he wasn't that good in the Bills' offense last year.
Maybe good offenses rise everyone else around them. Since it is the Sunday night football game, I want to point you to a new and fun and all-new Sunday Night 7 game on the NBC Sports Predictor app. It's free. It's easy to play. Just make 7 simple predictions about what will happen in Sunday Night Football for your chance at the $2 million. You see that up there? That's $2 million in guaranteed cash prize this season. $100,000 up for grabs in each contest. All right.
I write the content for that too, by the way.
There you go.
Support the rug I just bought.
Let's get back to the viewer questions. Again, leave them in the Twitch and YouTube chats. Let's go here. Melvin Gordon is back, guys. This is the first Melvin Gordon question we've gotten all show. This is from Brecken O'Brien. Melvin Gordon or Marquise Brown?
Marquise Brown. Not close.
Yeah, I go Hollywood. We're getting a ton of news about Melvin still splitting carries, and I think more
as he
importantly,
should.
Conflicting news too.
Conflicting news, definitely carries, and also we're going to see Eckler continue to stay really involved in this passing game. He's good enough to work as a true slot or out wide.
Eckler's a top 10 running back this week. Don't worry about Gordon.
Wow. Chargers are 6.5-point home favorites. That might dictate Melvin Gordon sees maybe 15 touches, but we'll see. It's an interesting one to watch as we move along. All right, this is from Joe J. Tight end and flex spots needed. Half-point PPR, pick 2. Again, pick 2. Evan Ingram, Austin Hooper, or Allen Robinson. You're definitely playing Evan Ingram.
Yeah, come
so
on.
Put that
this
in
is
there.
a pick 1 question.
So it's really Allen Robinson, who is now attached to Chase Daniel, or Austin Hooper, who had a massive week last week.
I'm going with Allen Robinson, and it hurts a little bit because we have seen Chase Daniel almost favor Tariq Cohen over A-Rob, but The Falcons offense, like, they don't game plan for Austin Hooper to be their featured weapon. An overwhelming majority of his production this year has come with them trailing. And now, yes, the Falcons have trailed for a lot of this season, so that has something to do with it. But they want Ridley, they want Julio to be the guys that are getting this offense going. I think this week against the Texans, they can finally get those two going.
The Bears targeted running backs at the second highest rate last year in Chase Daniel's 2 starts because that's how Nagy game planned. He put Tariq Cohen at the forefront of that offense. Having said that, I still think Allen Robinson's ceiling is much higher than Austin Hooper's and floor, honestly. Chase Daniel isn't bad, and so I go back to him in London.
This is a fun question from Dave. Sammy Watkins or Stephon Diggs in standard?
It's Sammy Watkins.
Still?
Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't feel good to go either way, but I go Sammy.
In standard, it feels about even, right? So give me the team that we know can throw the ball successfully and the highest total of the weekend, as opposed to the guy who just left his own locker room. And
this is a pretty good spot for Sammy, too, with how much zone coverage the Colts run. Like, if anything, Mecole and Robinson are going to be the guys that could have rough nights. I think Sammy gets back on track here.
Cami Penn asks, is Julian Edelman a safe play after missing, a lot of time with a chest injury, a lot of practice? Or should she go, or he, Curtis Samuel or Keyshawn Johnson? I still go with Julian Edelman since he's active and playing.
I don't know if he's safe, but I still go Julian Edelman.
I agree. Yep. Game over 425, Mike Williams, D.D. Westbrook, or Cole Beasley in full point PPR.
Mike Williams. I love
really?
Mike
You love
week.
Mike Williams this week?
Yes, he's getting back on good health. This is a spot where we're going to see all the coverage going towards Keenan Allen again, specifically Chris Harris Jr., who in my mind is really the only cornerback or safety in this Broncos secondary now that you truly have to be concerned with. So we got a defense that has not been good this year, and we got Mike Williams, who, when he's been on the field, like in that Lions game when he was playing limited snaps, every time he was out there, Rivers just wanted to give him contested catch and jump ball opportunities. So I really do think Mike Williams is one of these wide receiver 2s that could be a wide receiver 1 in most offenses, and I think we see some of that today.
This week in particular, it's a good Mike Williams week. The offense has to run through him and Eckler because Chris Harris has only played, I believe, 4 snaps in the slot this year, but Chris Harris also used to be a full-time slot guy. So I would assume he travels with Keenan Allen everywhere he goes. And he's legitimately like the only corner I worry about who's shut down.
Let's help Duncan with his quarterback conundrum. He has Kyler Murray or Jameis Winston. I'll set this up. Kyler Murray on the road, not favored at the Cincinnati Bengals, which is not a good defense. Or Jameis Winston on the road, again, not favored, but a total of, and both totals are 47 as of right now. So who are you going with, Ian?
I'm going Kyler here. I'm a little worried about the pressure Jameis is going to face today. I took the just combined pressure rates, every team's offensive line, the defense they're facing, and Jameis popped up with the worst one on the list. I mean, the Saints have done a really good job getting after the pass rusher this year, and we saw how much better that defense looked against the Cowboys last week once Rankins got back in the interior. So, it's ups and downs with Jameis. Could see it being more of a down week. And, yeah, Kyler has not been pretty. We know that. But first 2 weeks of the year really showed off the passing upside. Last 2 weeks showed more of the rushing upside. At some point, we're going to see him put it together and have a really big game. Might be this week.
It's one of those where I think Jameis Winston succeeds most, and this is pretty obvious, when his offensive line plays well. And they played surprisingly excellent against the Los Angeles Rams. Can they do the same thing against the New Orleans Saints, who again have Sean Rankins back? It's a big question.
I lean Kyler, and that's just fingers crossed David Johnson plays in the slot over Pharaoh Cooper more. But I don't know. We're going to see what happens. But I lean Kyler.
Let's close out with our final Core 4 matchup. That is the Cleveland Browns at the San Francisco 49ers. It's your Monday Night Football game. 46.5 total with the 49ers, who are 3-0, I might add. That's for you, Chris, as 3.5-point home favorites. The first question I have to you, Ian Hartitz, what is the real Browns offense? Who does it run through? Because we talked about it last week, right? That this isn't exactly what the Browns wanted to be identity-wise. And it seems like they took more off Baker's plate, and that seemed to work more in Week 4.
Yeah, I think it's Nick Chubb. I mean, we saw the issues the first few weeks of the season, and it was the Browns' offensive line couldn't protect Baker Mayfield as well as they wanted to. And, it wasn't even just failure to protect him. It was he couldn't even get outside the pocket and, make some of these off-script plays that we saw him routinely pull off as a rookie. So it does seem like this offense's, ultimate state is going to be give the ball to Nick Chubb as much as possible, dial play action shots to Odell Beckham Jr. Every other receiver is going to be a little bit of an auxiliary option with a kind of a low week-to-week floor. I think that's what we see.
Daigle, how should people who drafted Odell Beckham feel?
I would not be concerned just yet. I say this.
We're almost 5 weeks in.
I know. I say this as someone who just went around my leagues trading for him, so I'm kind of biased opinion right now. But it's still Odell Beckham, and this offense, even in their uptick to 12 personnel now, assuming they use that again, we don't know. He was still on the field for every snap. Like I'm not concerned just yet.
Despite my question, I agree with you.
Yes.
Look, it's one of those things where, to me, in week 13, we won't even remember the questions we had in week 5.
Right.
And I think that's one of those questions that we have right now is where's Odell's fit? And by week 13, he's just going to be fantastic.
I think sometimes it's dumbed down, but sometimes it's as simple as he's one of the best receivers in the league. Like, when does he get fed? Right. Oh, I'm just going to buy it until he gets fed.
On the 49ers side, outside of George Kittle, who are you excited to start on this 49ers team? I mean, there's 100 players I could list. You have your Deebo Samuels, you have your Dante Pettis's, you have that 3-person backfield as well. I mean, look at all these names. It's amazing. But George Kittle's a fantastic player. But if they are going to reach that, 25 total, who's going to score those points, Daigle?
Excited, Breida and Raheem Mostert. And that's genuinely about it right now. Dante Pettis, I do think gets involved, but that's still guesswork. Like, we don't know for sure.
He did get more involved prior to the bye.
Yes.
We have that to hang our hat on.
Yes, he was on the field more. We know that much. So
that's a positive.
That's a
compared to
good
week
thing.
1.
It's a good thing.
Seems like they finally settled on Marquise Goodwin, Deebo Samuel, and Dante Pettis in 3 wide receiver sets. With that said, we're still seeing some Richie James, Kendrick Bourne, but that's the case everywhere in the backfield. Tevin Coleman should be back, and Jeff Wilson could be active too. So with this whole crowded offense everywhere except for Kittle, the only guy I do want a little bit of still is Deebo Samuel because, look, Jalen Hurd, IR, he's not coming back. They thought that was going to be a possibility. I think Deebo is Kyle Shanahan's toy. Like, he's the guy he's going to scheme up the fun plays for, the extravagant screens, get him some, reverses and all that stuff. Deebo seems like the most versatile guy in this offense that can pull off all those things. We've seen him use down the field. Guy who doesn't have any holes in his game. It's just about being more polished. So I think more and more as the season goes on, we see Deebo emerge as the number 2 weapon outside of Kittle.
And Deebo still leads all in snaps.
We have about 5 or 6 minutes left, so let's do some rapid-fire questions. This is from the Shadow Bob. DeMarcus Robinson or Terry McLaurin, half-point PPR. We know Terry McLaurin's missed some time. He's back, but in an awful matchup against the New England Patriots.
DeMarcus Robinson. It's just that much better of a matchup. Is Terry McLaurin the better talent? Absolutely. Doesn't matter. No. DeMarcus Robinson.
Yep, DeMarcus Robinson.
Ian, to you, the Bruce, 12, Josh Jacobs, Michael Gallup, or again, Terry McLaurin. This is full-point PPR, which might be noteworthy because Josh Jacobs does not catch passes despite being very good at that. John Gruden, talking to you. But you still go with Jacobs of this trio.
Yeah, and we could finally see the passes uptick this week. Just who else they could throw the ball to? Keelan Doss, Hunter Renfrow, and Trevor Davis are literally the only active Raiders receivers. So, I mean, I know.
How dare you not mention Jalen Richard?
Derek Carr is going to try to throw the ball to Darren Waller and Jalen Richard as much as possible. Maybe there's 5 targets left over for Jacobs.
I love how Graz Daz Trez is thinking because he's not getting stuck to where he drafted players. He's asking, is Le'Veon Bell still a start? Most likely with Luke Falk as a starting quarterback. His other option instead is Mecole Hardman.
Yes, Le'Veon. This is still the only guy with a McCaffrey-esque workload other than McCaffrey. I understand it hasn't resulted in many big weeks yet because they can't score an offensive touchdown.
They just can't move the ball
with
Luke Falk.
But Le'Veon, and he's at the top of most broken tackle statistics. Like, it's a shame it's been this bad of a start for Le'Veon because this guy came and showed up week 1 in great shape. He's been playing very well. It's just worst offense in the league without Darnold.
It is a forward-thinking question, but you're still going Le'Veon Bell. You're just not watching the game.
DJ Ailmo, who should I start? Pick 2 of these: James Conner, Ronald Jones, Chris Thompson. Sit Chris Thompson. Let's move on. Rough Fasters, Jordan Howard or Philip Lindsay. Jordan Howard, I think, had 2 touchdowns last week?
Yeah. And
3.
3.
He had 3 touchdowns?
He caught for another one.
I don't believe you.
He was a receiving back, yeah. It's Philip Lindsay.
On the road as 6.5-point dogs.
Yes, because I understand that him and Freeman have been splitting routes, but in that case, I still think he's used in negative game script more than Jordan Howard is used in what will likely be a 2-score lead throughout for the Eagles.
Yeah, I don't think Howard necessarily took over the backfield, even though he had a good day. We're still going to see plenty of Miles Sanders and probably even a little more Sproles than we saw last week.
All it did was give us faith in season long. Oh, Jordan Howard exists. We can use him if absolutely
I would really live in a world where he
I'm using him in some leagues, Josh.
Let's sit one of these, okay? From Pancake, half-point PPR, Matt Breida, Will Fuller, or Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders is the one who has not hit a big play, just like Will Fuller, and Matt Breida is the one who's not seeing touchdown opportunity.
I'm sitting Sanders here, and or him or Breida, that's tough.
I think you play Matt Breida.
Yeah, you play Breida over Sanders for sure.
Yeah, yep.
I like Sanders a lot, and this may be the
They're
game.
14-point favorites.
I know, and this will be the game you use him because you don't have faith in him.
So you sit Will Fuller.
No, never.
No, you never sit
Not
Will
even if
Fuller.
there's a fire.
No. If Will Fuller,
You just said to sit Will Fuller earlier in the game,
did.
in the show.
Against Curtis and Flash, not Miles Sanders.
Wow.
Come on.
Speaking of Josh Gordon or Marquez Valdez-Scantling, that's from Tower and Fall.
Gordon.
I understand immediate trickle down says Valdez-Scantling should be good, but it's still like he gets Byron Jones coverage. It's not a great spot, man. Like, just you kind of want to avoid the Packers.
Attack this Washington secondary.
Yeah.
Norman can't hang with Gordon, and the cool stuff we're seeing too is like Josh Gordon snaps in the slot and in line or shooting up this year. Like they're almost using him as more of a Rob Gronkowski type weapon inside the red zone, and he's kind of the only receiver left on this offense that Brady is truly comfortable throwing 50-50 balls to. So
The fact Josh Norman's healthy is the reason to play Josh Gordon. Because, like, Josh Norman being active is better for opposing offenses. You want to see that every week.
Gentlemen, we did it. There goes 45, 47 minutes. We're all done. Again, if you
5
have
weeks.
some extra questions, go and check out Pat's rankings, which are up on the site right now, or go check these guys' rankings out, which are on the season pass. That's rotoworld.com/win. So for Ian Harditz, John Daigle, I'm Josh Norris. Go and subscribe to the Rotoworld Football Podcast. Do it right now because we'll have a podcast for you in the morning on Monday and Tuesday morning as well.
He's right.
Good luck today. Talk to you all next week.